So Todd, can you tell us a bit about yourself and POCKETVouchers?
Yep, so I am a ex-marketer and founded POCKETVouchers 5 years ago. So what we've built the company into is a mobile marketing company specialising in trackable SMS vouchers. So we're in the mobile voucher and mobile coupon space, with the core difference that we've built a platform so that the consumer can maybe text in off a street poster and get a uniquely coded voucher, and when that's presented at the retail store, it's got a unique code which can get validated at real time so they can actually cancel the voucher and track all redemption information. And that's something that has, anyone can hold up a text message, but we've really focused on making something trackable so you can know your exact return on investment.
So I understand you use Azure for part of that. What part does Azure play in your system?
We've just basically since about halfway through last year, we've decided to do a complete rebuild of our platform. So we'd sort of build it as any startup does, I guess, kind of hacked together and bent and broke it over the first few years, and then decided we're now looking to expand into Australia and needed some increased performance. So we use SQL Azure, and that's now the backbone of basically our entire back-end platform.
So can you explain why you chose Azure over perhaps your own servers or another cloud provider?
Yeah, so I went through when we decided to do the rebuild, looked at our options, and we're never really going to host our own servers locally, I think, just from a cost perspective. But also we would currently use a sort of a shared hosted server, and we're looking at the cost of that and kind of wanted to compare that against some of the cloud offerings. We looked at Azure and EC2 and Rackspace, the usual suspects, and in the end I think we found that the cost, as far as cost of performance, was miles better. I think from all the platform holders, I guess, versus having just a straight hosted database, especially for us, we wanted to scale up. And we went with Azure in the end, looking at our current platform had been built using SQL, which did play a role, but also I think we like the platform feel of SQL Azure versus maybe Rackspace or Amazon, which is a bit more of you can build whatever you want. But we really wanted to have a focus on building around SQL. So I guess we had a bit of a use what's already there rather than pouring massive amounts of money into building something too customised. Wanted to use SQL and I guess use our investment to kind of bring that to life and and expand into new territories.
Is expanding into like Australia and new territory something that Azure has made easier?
Yeah, absolutely, and that was I guess the reason for it, and we've just rebuilt a whole platform in Azure and have found it super simple, I guess, to we use web services to deal with mobile, the carriers, the cell phone carriers, through to point of sale vendors, and the FPOS network, which we use for getting redemption transactions, and we have found that I guess just the scalability, and also I think going into Australia with just much bigger market with vastly higher transaction numbers, and that's something that we were a bit worried about around when we're over there talking to big companies there, wanting to know around the performance numbers, and that's something that we can just scale up as required, and also dedicate some virtual machines to key customers and allow them the performance they need, which is and for us as a business, we're very campaign dependent. So one month we might have very little happening, and the next month we might need to send out a couple of 100,000 vouchers in the space of a day or two, and that means that to have to carry our base infrastructure at that high level 12 months a year is just going to be well out of our budgets. But for using Azure means we can easily scale up, and even if that's just for a day or two, we can fire up half a dozen extra VMs to run the core part of our platform and deal with that peak, and then we only pay the hourly rate.
So as you're adding new services, the cost been all right? Have you found ways to reduce that cost as well?
When we're having high load, we're generally making more money, so I'm less worried about having to pay for a bit of extra service space. But at the end of, or just recently, we've been allowed into the beta program for the extra small VMs in Azure, and that takes the hourly processing rate down by about a half, so I think from around 15 cents to about 8 cents, and that's something we've found really useful, especially for some of our more non-core operations. So things like if it's just running our UI for administration, there's only 1 or 2 users, we'll just run that on a small VM, whereas some of our more core processing stuff will run on the larger ones. But I think having that flexibility makes a big difference, and also takes, I suppose, that base level down, especially for things like testing a new service or something like that. It can it's not huge, costs about $150 a month or something is the base fee, but that will halve using the extra small VMs, which are more than capable of running kind of beta programs. So,
have you had any major hurdles with implementing Azure that you could tell us about?
Yeah, I think coming from my angle, I guess, as the business owner and not the core developer, haven't been too involved in the technical deployment. But I think one thing we did definitely found is that there are some tricks and some learnings around deploying something in SQL Azure versus just SQL on a base box. So I think for that would just be allowing a bit of extra time and probably money, I suppose, if you're paying someone else to do a bit of that development and work through that. But I know it's been nothing. There is some great support out there on the web, and the Microsoft guys have been great as well, supporting our developers. So it's something that their learnings have increased huge in the last 3 or 4 months, and it was one of their first projects deploying into Azure. So now I think that we've learned that and picked up some of those hurdles. It's definitely be less down the track. They'd probably be able to tell you exactly what they were, and I'm sure there's a few of them. But yeah, the big thing is just being realistic that it's there are little subtle differences between running something on SQL and versus deploying it into the cloud.
And have you got any core tips that you'd suggest to other companies looking at Azure?
Yeah, I think I would. I definitely first especially as startups, have a good look at Azure, because I think it's the Amazons and the Rackspaces that are probably a little bit sexier maybe, and tend to be positioned more as the startup platforms. Whereas I think Azure now, especially with the extra small VMs, makes quite a difference to the cost. And I also think it depends really on working out what you want. I think that possibly, yes, you are going with Azure, you've fixed a little bit more to one provider, to Microsoft, and with what they're doing, versus the other platforms being, I guess, more infrastructure based and being able to do what you want. But for us, I didn't want to necessarily spend a lot of capital and money building, customizing something that we were perfectly happy that SQL ran for us. So instead we've focused being able to use what's based in Azure and actually focus development on our applications and laying things over top of it that's actually going to make money, rather than spending, I guess, the first few months just building that base infrastructure. So, and that depends. Some businesses that'll suit, some it won't. But and another thing for us, we do a lot of integration with third parties using web services, and that's something that using Azure and SQL and WCF.NET web services, all very industry standard, and that's meant that the parties we work with always understand our spec documents straight away, really easy to integrate, and we can manage to do that. Whereas potentially, in our old system, it was a bit more of make your own and home baked things, which took a lot more time to get people's heads around, and which turned into money or delays and things like that. So I think for us, using, I guess, what is a bit of an industry standard, while slightly less creative possibly, has delivered a lot of benefits.
Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I suppose the last interesting thing for us has been the big difference of using Windows Azure versus just say hosting it ourselves, was the ability to scale up and use different machines, and that's something we've actually sharded out a lot of our operations to run on separate machines, and that's had a huge advantage around upgrading different elements or scaling up performance of business critical elements versus what we don't have a heap of traffic through. And I think that's been a big difference with Azure.
So your core application of redeeming vouchers is sheltered from the
absolutely, and that is the guys going in and accessing. If we get a big hit on our online reporting interface, that's not going to mean that it's taxing our core operations. And I think that's something that from the platform as a service makes it a lot easier to deploy, and also we can upgrade a certain part of the system without being too worried about what's going to happen to the rest of it. And I think that's something that we will continue to do more and more of. And I think there is some feedback around the maximum size of databases you can have in Azure and being a little bit limiting, but it depends, I guess, with deploying multiple databases, you get around that, and that's something we've done. And we're even looking at building automated programs so that when some of our queues get too long or to a delay that we're not happy with, we'll actually automatically boot up another machine to kill that queue and then turn off again once it's managed. I think that's something from a performance and cost management, when you're only paying for those hours, is going to be, allow us to deal with our peaks, but without having to pay for, the extra infrastructure during the quieter times.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Todd, for your time. Cheers.
Cheers.